Jenny hated working the graveyard shift at the 24/7 convenience store, especially when she was by herself. The flickering lights and eerie quiet made the large store feel unnaturally ominous at night. She glanced around nervously as she straightened up the counter, looking forward to closing up in just a couple more hours. The silence was suddenly broken by the faint sound of shuffling footsteps. She tensed, peering down the aisles to see who had come in. "Hello, I'm just about to close up," she called out. No response came back. Slowly, she stepped out from behind the counter, her heels clicking on the linoleum floor. She turned down the first aisle and froze. A little girl with long dark hair partially obscured her face as she stared at the ground. Her pale blue dress looked dated and worn. Are you lost, sweetie?" Jenny asked gently. "Where are your parents?" The girl remained motionless, not even bothering to look up. A creeping unease settled over her. Something felt very wrong. She considered calling the police, but decided to try talking to the girl first. "It's very late for a little one like you to be out by yourself," Jenny said, moving cautiously closer. "Let me call someone to get you, okay?" She hesitantly reached out to brush the hair back from the girl's face. Her fingertips had just grazed the soft strands when the girl jerked violently away. Jenny stumbled back in surprise. The girl finally raised her head, revealing sunken, lifeless eyes and a grayish pallor Jenny had only ever seen on the dead. Jenny wanted to scream, but sheer terror clamped down on her vocal cords. The lights overhead began to flicker as the ghost girl opened her mouth, emitting an otherworldly shriek that cut straight to Jenny's core. Jenny's paralysis broke. She turned and fled, hearing glass shatter and crash all around her as the wailing continued. Heart pounding wildly, she scrambled to get outside, hoping the nightmare would end if she just kept running. She burst through the doors into the parking lot, the ghostly wailing cutting off abruptly behind her. She fumbled for her keys with shaking hands, constantly glancing back at the store in fear. After what felt like an eternity, she managed to unlock her car and scramble inside. As she tried to catch her breath, movement in the corner of her eye made her blood run cold. In the back seat, reflected in the rearview mirror, was the ghostly little girl. "No, no, no!" Jenny screamed in horror, frantically trying to start the ignition. But the car just clicked and sputtered, the engine failing to turn over. The ghost girl crawled closer, spider-like movements sending chills down Jenny's spine. Black tendrils crept from the girl's empty eyes, reaching for Jenny over the seat. Gasping for air, Jenny abandoned the car and tumbled back outside. She had to get help. Shakily, she ran for the phone booth by the road, glancing back to see if the ghost was pursuing her. Jenny ripped open the door and grabbed the phone receiver, pleading breathlessly for the police to come quick. But only empty static answered her cries. Behind her, the glass door of the phone booth slowly began to frost over. A small handprint formed in the condensation, right at Jenny's eye level. She whirled around to find the ghost girl crammed inside the tiny booth with her, rotten breath washing over Jenny's face as she opened her mouth to let out another piercing, haunted wail. Jenny collapsed to the floor of the phone booth, clamping her hands over her ears against the deafening shriek. The glass walls around her shuddered violently, threatening to shatter at any moment. Just when she thought her eardrums would burst, the wail cut off abruptly. Cautiously, Jenny cracked open her eyes. The ghostly girl was nowhere to be seen, trembling. Jenny staggered back outside, half expecting the girl to reappear. The parking lot was still and quiet once more. Not daring to get close to her car, Jenny stumbled down the road on foot. She had to get home and barricade herself somewhere safe. As she walked, the streetlights overhead began flickering in succession, keeping pace with her. Each light darkened just as she passed under it, enveloping her in momentary blackness before the one ahead illuminated. Panicked, she broke into a jog, then an all-out run, fleeing the encroaching darkness. But it continued to follow her relentlessly, no matter how fast she ran. Just up ahead, she could see the glowing sign of a late-night diner. Sanctuary. The light over the diner entrance went out as she approached, but she lunged forward, grabbing the door handle just as something brushed the back of her neck. Jenny burst into the warmly lit diner, startling a few late-night patrons. She rushed over to the counter, glancing nervously back at the door. "Please, you have to help me," she begged the server. "There's something out there, something not human." The server eyed her with concern. "Did something happen at the convenience store, hun? Maybe you should sit down and catch your breath." Jenny opened her mouth to describe the horror she'd experienced, the flickering lights, the phantom girl's chilling screams. But the words died in her throat. She realized how unhinged she must sound to them. Swallowing hard, Jenny slid onto a stool. She decided not to mention the ghost. The mere thought of uttering that word made her sound crazy. "I'm sorry for the disturbance," Jenny said quietly. "It must have just been my imagination getting carried away. I thought I saw, but it was nothing." The server gave her a sympathetic pat. "No worries, sweetie. Late nights can play tricks on you. Let me get you some nice hot coffee." Jenny managed a grateful nod. As she wrapped her chilled fingers around the warm mug, she slowly began to relax. The comforting chatter of the diner guests and aroma of coffee and pie soothed her frayed nerves. Perhaps she had just imagined it all: the lights, the wailing, the ghostly apparition. Jenny let the tension ease from her shoulders. She was safe here in the brightly lit diner, far away from whatever had terrified her at the convenience store. The nightmare was over. For now.